So y'all know I'm an Avatar the Last Airbender stand, and Netflix just dropped this 8-part series of the Avatar. It's supposed to be like live version. Y'all, I'm 5 minutes in and I've already had a revelation. So I want to share that real quick before I get back to it. And I can't even tell y'all how aligned this is because I literally was just studying the secret doctrine and we were just talking about the masculine and feminine principles. So the Fire Nation is supposed to represent the masculine principle. And you know what part of us in this physical world is masculine? Our body. Our physical being, okay? There are 3 chakras that rule that physical being. The bottom 3 chakras rule money, sex, and power. Hence why that's always being shoved down our throat, because it keeps you locked into your masculine principle, into your fire element. If you're gonna train to be an avatar, you have to be air element first, so you have to be an airbender. Well, air represents intellect, okay? It's your mind. The first kingdom to be attacked by the Fire Nation to keep you locked into your masculine principle was the intellect, was your mind, because the universe is mental. If they have power over your mind, they have power over everything. The water element is your emotions, and the earth element is nature. So it is what grounds you. If you're ever feeling emotional, you go and put your feet in the ground and you discharge those emotions in the ground. Because the earth principle is what's all around us. It's the aether, it's what keeps us connected. So Avatar the Last Airbender is a documentary about alchemy. It's about balancing all of your principles, fire, air, earth, and water, so that all 4 elements work together and you reach this state of paranirvana, or this state where your emotions don't control you, where you're thinking clearly and critically, where you're grounded in your decision making, where your emotions are just signals to help you understand what your mind is trying to perceive. You become the avatar when you ascend to this level in this plane, which can be reached by releasing your masculine principle, which is your Fire Nation. See, the fire in us is very passionate. It's desire, right? But fire is supposed to be creativity, but it's not supposed to take over everything. It's supposed to give us audacity, but it can get out of hand. As you know, if you start a fire, all of a sudden it's down a fucking block. So the first thing you have to do is get your fucking mind right. Air is your intellect. You need to know more. Water is your emotions. You need to learn how to manage those and also understand them, because they help you to understand the mind. Fire is your passion. It's your creativity. It's also your audacity, your ego, but it's also passion and desire. And earth is your aether. It's the connecting tissue. It's what grounds us all. And it's in everything that you see and everything you interact with, including yourself. Earth is nature. I'm gonna come back with a full review of the show once I get done watching it, but I just wanted to drop those gems. Happy healing, friends. Y'all, so I finally finished Avatar the Last Airbender. This is the live version or recreation of the anime that used to be on Nickelodeon in the early 2000s. I took so many notes that it looks like I wrote a motherfucking dissertation on this, but it was so many gems throughout, which I love. The casting for this was, whoever this was, chef's fucking kiss, bitch. Because the casting was on brand, baby. But before I hop into the contents of the show, I need to go through every single character and what I feel like they represent. So this is what this first part is going to be about. Before I dive into the characters, though, it's something that we need to understand. Okay, when we were in the 3rd density of a consciousness, there is something that exists called the choice, right? And the catalyst for you making this choice is pain and suffering. So the choice is to polarize on a positive path, or what we consider, because we think in terms of duality, which is actually polarity, on the negative path. If you polarize on the positive path, it only requires you to be in balance, 51% positive. And on that path, you are dropped into your heart space, which is about compassion, forgiveness, and love. When you polarize on a negative path, it requires you to be an extreme narcissist, be full of hatred, ruled by fear, things like that. And it takes 95% for you to polarize on that path. People in this Fire Nation are supposed to represent the people who are ruled by their ego, ruled by fear. Because your masculine principle is what you have to learn to balance, because it can get out of control like a fire. Now let's talk about the characters. So this is King Ozai. And if you look at the character that he plays throughout this, he is an extreme narcissist. Nobody is fucking safe, not even his own fucking kid. This is supposed to represent what it looks like when you are fully into your ego. He rules by fear. He's literally about conquering and winning. Nobody is safe, not even his kids, because he doesn't, these people who polarize on this negative path, they skip over their heart space because they don't find it to be useful. So that means they have no love, compassion, or forgiveness for anybody around them. He's desensitized to his emotions, and he does what most narcissistic parents do, and he pins his children against each other. And now they're in this position where they have to compete for his affection. He doesn't care about casualties. He literally only cares about himself. And anybody who gets in the way of him getting what he wants is going to be a casualty. He thinks that compassion for other people is a liability and loving other people is a weakness because that is what he is ingrained in his children. Anybody that he cannot use as a resource, he treats them as if they are disposable. And anybody who dares to question his antics, he's willing to take it the furthest. As you can see, he scarred his own son's face just because he was showing compassion towards other people. Insane behavior. But the gag is that people like this are never satisfied. You're never going to be able to be what it is that they want you to be. They put all these expectations on you, knowing that you're going to fail the fucking test anyway. And yeah, you can compete for his affection, but you'll never get it because he does not have access to his heart space. Part 2 will be in a playlist below. So this is the second part of my review of Avatar the Last Airbender, which just premiered on Netflix. On this part, I'm just about to go through each character and tell y'all what I think they represent. I already did the King Ozai in the last one, so click the playlist at the bottom so you can see that one first. So boom, let's talk about Prince Zuko. Now, this is one of my favorite characters in the entire show because he was born into this toxic environment and he was a person who was born with access to his heart space. So he knew that something was wrong, but he was just following the conditioning that he was taught. And in the entire series, he's in this internal battle between what's right and what's wrong. What he has been taught by the oppressor, which is his father, but also his sympathy for the other side, which is the oppressed. The whole point of his character is to show us that this is taught behavior. You were not born this way. You were conditioned to be this way. And Prince Zuko is like any kid that was born into chaos, where they're in this environment that they don't necessarily agree with, but there's still this need to want to fit in with your family. So Prince Zuko initially tried to do what most kids do, and that's find something that you can control. So he relies on rules. He relies on order. And it literally has to be beat into him that he's not the fucking op. And he knows that he's the op. He knows that they are causing the chaos and they are causing destruction. Now, he is meant to be a generational curse breaker, and we start to see this as the Avatar unfolds. But he's still in this stage of being in this internal conflict of, do I end up being the outlier to this family, or do I stay and try to stick it through and try to, find my peace amongst the chaos, which is something his uncle did. His story should be a testimony to us all because a lot of us are born into these toxic family dynamics where we enter and we know that we're different from them, but we'll either try to assimilate early on in life, and then it takes us later on in life once we go through this spiritual journey and we realize that that reality was false, for us to start unpacking that trauma and actually becoming who we know that we can. Now, Prince Zuko is just as compassionate as the Avatar. They are literally mirroring each other. Now, this is Uncle Iroh, and he literally represents the fact that people can change. He actually did what Prince Zuko couldn't do, and that was assimilate within the family, do his duties. But what happened is his son died, which again is pain and suffering. Pain is a good catalyst for you to choose differently. Pain is the catalyst for change. When his son was killed in battle, he literally gave up and was like, I'm not doing this no more. This is not the life that I want. People do not have to continue to die. So in the midst of him thinking that he's doing the right thing, he actually chose differently once his son died. Now, the reason why him and Zuko have this good relationship is because Zuko is just as compassionate as he is. And he was the only person who considered the fact that he lost his son. Everybody else was calling him a coward, but Prince Zuko was like, look, I feel what you feel, and I'm sorry that that happened to you. But I love his character because he represents the type of people who choose peace. We don't gotta be peaceful, but we be on that fuck around and find out. Now, he don't want to hurt you, but if it ever come down to it, it's gonna be you and not him. Now, this little motherfucker makes my ass itch. This is Princess Azula. The entire time, we see her not knowing any type of boundary. She's literally assimilated to the life, and she actually wants the life of being the oppressor, and the only thing she cares about is beating her brother. She wants to be recognized as the person who should be taking over control, and she keeps trying to prove it by this competition that she has with her brother. But really the problem is that she doesn't love herself because she doesn't see herself as valuable because she never was treated as valuable. She is a good example of where women fall into this realm of toxic masculinity. You could be fucking perfect and you still will not be seen. Whole time, her brother can do the bare minimum by just spotting that the fucking Avatar is back around, and all of a sudden he was back in his father's good graces. This is what it looks like when you blindly follow and when you try to prove yourself. But she's also a result of her father pinning her and her brother against each other because he saw the strength in her. He just never wanted to acknowledge it. This bitch is dangerous. But this motherfucker is what's wrong with the world, okay? This is Admiral or Sergeant Zhao. And he has pick me written all over him. He's somebody who has never done anything with his life, never been picked for anything in his life, and he willing to snake anybody who gets in his way. This is what happens when you get so far into your ego that you start to have a God complex. He the type of people who will steal your money and help you fucking look for it. And he's driven by external validation. He only wants the validation of the king. So anybody, including the king's son, who gets in his way, is up for them. These are the type of people who take credit for your work and they didn't do nothing. They didn't contribute to anything. To me, he plays the most dangerous character because they know no fucking bounds. They'll do anything and they cowards, so they sneaky about it. They playing both sides of the fence. And they have no moral compass or no code. So it's not anything, no line that they will not cross. Next, we have Jet. Now, Jet is actually on the right side of history, but he's literally got the right idea, but he's going about it the wrong way. These are the type of people who are victims of the oppressor, but end up mirroring the oppressor's behavior. Even though he has the purest of intentions and he's on the right side of history, he's going about it the wrong way because he also doesn't care about casualties. And the only reason why he's doing what he's doing is for the purposes of revenge. It's not out of love for other people. It's because he was hurt, and hurt people hurt people. He's actually not fueled by fear. He's fueled by pain, and he's weaponizing that and using it to justify the fact that he's hurting innocent people. Now, this man, let me tell you, you know how Boosie said in that song, your mama got more heart than your daddy, bitch ass? Is this man. His son, who has a disability, has way more heart than him. This is a coward. This is a bot. But the thing about it is he's doing what he's doing out of love for his son, and he's trying to protect his son. So what he's did is he just gave in and is giving the Fire Nation anything that they want. But he represents the vast majority of just regular fucking people. And he's supposed to show us that the little people matter. What the little people do, actually contributes to the bigger issue. But these are the type of people who don't actually stand for nothing. They are bystanders. They will literally wait around and watch the shit happen, but they're still on this path of service to self because he does not care about the general whole. He's only trying to protect him and his son, kind of what Sokka is doing before he starts to travel with the Avatar. And this lady is supposed to represent the people who just accept their fate and are comfortable with just getting the crumbs. They've learned how to survive in that environment, so they're okay with it being whatever it is. So boom, this is Sokka. Now, Sokka at a very young age was required to become an adult. So he grew up in survival mode, so he only cared about protecting his own. Now, I don't know how many comments I get from Black people who are like, we got our own problems. We don't need to be worrying about their problems. Yeah, Sokka. He's on the right side of history, but he's a coward. Whereas his sister is nothing but fucking heart. But Sokka is also supposed to represent the people who are skeptical. The fear actually worked on him. And because of that, he was too afraid to do anything because he saw all of his people die at a very young age, and he was pushed into this position where he had to lead a tribe and he wasn't old enough to even fend for his fucking self. He's another example of a bystander. He doesn't want to be involved and never was involved. But if you put his back against the wall, he will do the right thing. But he's just resistant to change because he grew up in chaos. From the moment that he was born, they was killing his people. But he's another testament of the little roles mattering because he doesn't have any powers. He can't waterbend or airbend. However, he has science on his side. So if he has the right tools in place, he can still help from another angle, which is more physical than it is spiritual. Then we have my girl, Katara. I love Katara. I stand Katara. She's one of those people who was born out of pure love, who whatever the right thing is, we doing that. And it's not even up for discussion. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And she has a warrior spirit because she was born out of love, which makes her a little bit naive and green, but she learns from her mistakes. So she keeps evolving, and she is supposed to represent the future. are kids, because she goes into the water tribe and she tells them the way that y'all doing it is wrong. Women aren't supposed to just be sitting around. We can help. This is the younger generation. They are the seeds of our future. They are meant to come in and change the environment from what it used to be, because they're born with what we need for this time in history. She's willing to do the right thing no matter what the sacrifice is, and I fuck with that. And last, Aang, he has all the power, but he doesn't even want it. Because again, he was born out of love and he doesn't want to hurt people, but he doesn't understand the balance between it all. Meaning that it's bigger than just individual people. It's about a balance between everybody being able to live this peaceful life. Again, he's supposed to represent these seeds of the future as well, because he's a child. Which I think that's important, because in order for you to become this avatar, you do have to go back and unpack that shit that happened to you when you was a kid, because your inner child affects who you are. So there's no coincidence that he's a kid. But he's also vegan, which is telling. But he's compassionate. He cares about love. He cares about hurting other people. These are the type of people that we need in power. Go to part 3. All right, this is part 3. If you didn't see the other 2, click the link in the bottom. But I'm just about to go through the lines, the gems, the scenes that I loved, and this is in no particular order. Now, throughout the film, they said multiple times the other avatars are inside of you. Okay, I think they speak into the fact that all of our ancestors live within us, meaning that the information is in our DNA. It comes down to bloodlines. Now, we talked about bloodlines when I was talking about Aquaman. Another thing that I loved is they said it's the avatar's job to protect the natural world. And then we see the avatar come in and not know what the fuck he's doing. He literally has to learn and figure it out as he goes. But he uses the guidance of his ancestors. He gets to them through meditation. I also love the scene where Aang is feeling defeated and he's like, if I would have been here for that 100-year period of time, this would have never happened. And Katara hands him a seed, which literally is how you create things. And she tells him to focus on the seeds of the future. It's nothing that you can do about the past. Like, we in the now right now, what can we do to help people for the future? That's literally how we should be looking at time. Because when we focus on the past and not the lesson from the past, we get stuck there and we get stuck in that energy of the past. When we focus on the future and what we don't have, we literally get into this chasing energy. So you really have to stay in this now moment and do what you can do right now to get you to where you're going. I already said this before, but I love that the avatar is vegan. I love that he doesn't eat meat. I love that where his arrows are, or where our portals are, our energy portals. He was found in the South Pole in a ball of ice. What else is in the South Pole? Antarctica. Again, Aquaman. I love that they kept saying every single avatar had an individual experience. There's no one avatar that's going to be like the next. Even though they're reincarnations of the same soul, they don't have the same experience. So they don't have the same personality and they wouldn't handle things, the same way. But I also loved how he said every avatar is born with exactly what they need to help the generation they're being born into. So that means that everybody is a perfect piece of that God energy. Everybody is supposed to make an individual contribution, and it has nothing to do with the people who came before you or the people around you. I love the advice that they gave Aang, help one person at a time, but also understanding that that person has to be willing to receive your help. I love the scene where Katara was struggling with her waterbending, and she said she feels like her trauma was impacting her connection. Remember, I said to become the avatar, you literally have to go back and fix your inner child. All the trauma that you experience, you have to unpack it. You have to learn from it. And you have to stop touching it. You have to stop looking at it. You have to heal from it. And that will increase your connection with the energy inside of you. I also really love that Katara is a life learner and that she learned waterbending in an unconventional way. So she doesn't know what the rules are. So if she sees something that she likes from somebody else, she shamelessly steals it. Now, the Fire King, again, represents those people who choose this path of service to self. And that happens when you're too much in your fire element, which is about initiating, but it's very impulsive energy too. And their whole goal was to kill the last mind that thinks for itself, which is the avatar because he's from the air kingdom. Okay, he's the last person who actually uses their intellect. The scene where Prince Zuko was laying in the bed after his father had burned his face, his father says to him, sometimes you have to let go of the weak to make you strong. So he's reconfirming to him that the reason why he did what he did is because he cannot be weak. Weakness is a liability. I also love the scene where the avatar sat down to meditate and then all these horrible thoughts started coming through his head. And one of the thoughts that came through his head that was positive was, "You're a great avatar." Now, when he hung on to that positive thought, he was able to focus and go within and talk to his previous ancestors. Managing your thoughts is so fucking important when it comes to you trying to balance your elements, okay? Managing your thoughts and regulating your emotions. This is showing that. I also love that when he was talking to other avatars, wherever he was at, it looked like the spiritual realm, and the colors were brighter, everything was distorted, kind of like it looks if you're off shrooms. Shrooms are literally earth teachers. They are meant to lift the veil for you while you're on this physical plane. So anytime you do any of shrooms or earth's teachers, you are going to the spiritual realm, and you need to know what's over there so that you can know how to protect yourself. I teach this in my podcast, Becoming No One. The link is in my bio. Another thing I thought was interesting, then right after he talked to Avatar Kyoshi, he was able to channel her so much that he became her, and she was able to kind of like take over. But he could only do that when he was in the shrine of the last avatar. So you know how most Mexicans have Dias de Muertos, or they have like a day that represents their dead, and then some people who practice any type of magic have shrines or altars. That is this. That's what they're saying. It is our job to keep our ancestors alive, kind of like what they was talking about in Lovecraft Country. It is our job to keep our ancestors alive because they're always with us and they're willing to help us. So the Fire Nation actually represents your masculine principle. So when you rule by ego, it looks like you wanted to conquer things for the sake of conquering, and you don't care about who gets hurt in the process. Like, you'll burn everything fucking around you to get your way. It requires extreme narcissism. You have to be full of hatred and self-focused, not doing things for the good of the whole, but everything or every agenda that you push is based off of your needs and not anybody else's. They think that unity is working for me, like you working for me and you executing my plan. They think that that's unity. They rule by fear. Nothing matters again to them except for winning. All about duty and doing what everyone expects you to do, and they think that compassion is a sign of weakness. However, the Air Nation, which is the opposite, the free thinkers, right? They think unity is we work together as equals. They're loving, they're clear thinkers, they're balanced. They rule by love and compassion for other people and the good of the whole, bringing peace to everybody. They let go of all of these expectations, right? All these expectations and, managing your thoughts. They put all that aside so that you don't have any limitations or pressure on you. And compassion is a strength to them. I also like the scene where the avatar was flying to the mountain with the little boy who was in like the machine that helped him fly. I think that is a testament to the fact that science is useful. And yes, you can get things done through science, but there are certain things that people can do naturally without having to use science. Science literally mimics them. Gang, gang. I love that scene where the avatar tells Katara, in order for you to do the harder moves, you have to tap into your feelings. You have to tap into that energy. That makes me think of, like, you know how you get mad and you end up being stronger, or you hear those stories about somebody's kid getting ran over and then the mama lifting up the car? When you actually tap into that energy, you're going to be surprised at what it is that you actually can do. All of it is about believing in yourself. I love the story of the Earth Kingdom and how it was two opposing sides, a normal Romeo and Juliet, light versus darkness situation. And basically two people who were in power were in love. One of them died, and that was the only thing kind of like keeping the peace between them. So a war started, but the person who was left over, who had compassion for this person on the opposite side, won the war. And instead of seeking revenge on everybody that was against them, they brought everybody together and they unified them. And they said Earth was originally a place built on love. Because it was. That's where the saying heaven on earth comes from. I love the scene where Katara and Sokka went to the underground tunnel. Sokka blows out the light and he tells her, in order for you to see the light, you have to go through the darkness, basically. And it talks about this illusion that exists on this material plane that we have to go through, which, causes pain and suffering, right? It causes things that we have to unpack, right? But it's a good catalyst for us to find the light. Be about this service to other people. So think about those people who have been through tragic fucking stories. They've had a horrible experience here. They end up being the nicest, kindest people. And it's because, again, they went through that dark period. And once you go through that type of pain, it's like you understand it. So when somebody else is going through it, you sympathize with it. I also love that they kept on saying throughout the movie, each avatar was telling him, this is a path you got to chart on your own. You got to do it alone. The difference between them and Aang was Aang wasn't doing it alone. He had all of his friends and he didn't even want the power, but he was stronger than everybody else around him because he was from the air kingdom. He was a free thinker. When you healing, when you going on this path of self-discovery, you need like-minded individuals, but more times often than not, we end up taking the path alone because we think we got to do it alone, because we think that we're not going to be able to relate to certain people around us. So this is like just telling us it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to, lean on the people around you. Now, the relationship between Aang and the Earth Kingdom King is supposed to show us cause and effect. Aang leaving affected him greatly in his life because he had to grow up in this state of chaos and fear and war. And he felt like Aang owed him something. So this is supposed to show us that principle of cause and effect. What you do affects other people. And I thought what Aang did was beautiful. He held himself accountable and he validated his experience. Validation is a God response. And the only way to transcend your karma is to compensate for it, which is holding yourself accountable. They were showing us this in that scene. I also love that they said the spiritual world and the natural world are two separate things, but the avatar is what connects the two. Another bar. All right, this is part 4. I'm re-recording this because it deleted mysteriously when I was posting it and it never came back. So I'm just going to re-record it. The other ones are in the playlist at the bottom. So I'm just going to jump back into the things that I found interesting. I love the part when they started talking about the elemental spirits. And basically they're flying over this forest and they see that the forest had been burned. And they went down and talked to the people and they was like, oh, we sent some people to try to figure out what was going on, but they all disappeared. So this is supposed to be representative of an astral tear that happens in places that experience trauma, meaning the environment that experiences trauma. So if somebody is, in a house, that house is going to have a thin veil between the physical and the astral plane because it's an astral tear because of all the emotions that went out in that area. That can happen with Earth as well. So in this area, there was an astral tear, which allowed for this predatory spirit to come in and attach itself to the people who was trying to figure out what was going on. Now, this predatory spirit's name was Ko, and basically he was a spiritual attachment, and he was able to shapeshift into anything or any person that person knew, and he was a trickster. So he would start by trying to weaken your mind by putting all these nasty thoughts in your mind or playing on your traumas and experiences that you're holding in your subconscious mind. Now, when you're on the spiritual plane, you are using your subconscious mind, and that is where all your traumas lie. So these predatory spirits will come and prey on your weaknesses. And once you give into them, they have attached themselves to you and basically have full influence over you. As we see in the series, Aang never went where Katara and Sokka were because he managed the thought. When the thought came in or when his traumas came, he was like, no. And he was able to go and visit his loved one, which was his teacher. I also love the scene, though, where the Avatar and Gyatu was talking. And basically, he was like, it's okay. When I get done doing what I got to do, I'm going to come back and visit you. And when he came back to visit, he was gone. We have this arrogant presumption that we have constant access to our ancestors, which is crazy because they choose to come and lower their vibration in order for them to speak with us. And some of them end up choosing a different path, which is not reincarnating here, but going to the higher celestial planes. And once they're at a higher vibration, it just takes too much for them to come back down. So they lose interest in the material plane. So I feel like this was speaking to that. I also love the scene when Katara got scared and she started to go into a lucid dream. And, basically she was visiting a time where her mom died and she was blaming herself for it. So she was allowed to go into her subconscious mind to see what was basically messing with her and keeping her from having that connection to her element like she wanted to. However, because she gave into the pain of it, this predatory spirit was able to take over her. Sokka was simultaneously having the same experience, but he went back and he realized that his dad he overheard his dad when he was younger saying that he didn't think that he was good enough. So his whole entire life, he didn't think he was good enough. He didn't believe in himself until, he started hanging with the Avatar and then also saw the work that Katara was doing. Then he gained courage and strength from that. But he also gave in to the pain, so Ko was able to get a hold of him spiritually as well. All of the avatars, though, and Ko had everybody shook. They was like, how do we defeat Ko? And they like, I don't even want no parts of that. So you really do got to practice good spiritual hygiene because we are left wide open because we know nothing about our spiritual side. I also liked when he talked to Avatar Roku, who was like an original firebender, and he said that fire should live in balance with the other elements, not overpower it, which fire is the masculine principle. I also love the part where the bad guys kept using the energy of the comet, or he used the ice moon when the veil was thin to kind of try to attack the water tribe spiritually and physically. Y'all, astrology has been around since the ancient teachings of Thoth, alchemy, astronomy, astrology, tarot, divination, crystals, but they were outlawed with the rise of Christianity because they were trying to push a one world order. So anything that went against that, anything that was ancient teachings that taught you about going inside instead of looking for what you need outside of you was outlawed as witchcraft. The energy of the cosmos affects us because we are energy. So they were showing how they use astrology in order to plan these spiritual attacks, which is something that happens in this physical realm. I also liked when they were showing the two fish, the light and darkness, the yin and yang, and they was talking about the moon. The moon specifically is the light within the darkness. And they were saying, basically trying to tell us that you need both light and darkness. You can't exist as just one or the other because there needs to be balance between the two. I also love the scene where Aang tells Zuko, you have everything about the past avatars, okay? Zuko represents the oppressor, right? Aang represents the oppressed, okay? They know everything about us. Isn't it weird how it always feels like they got an inside joke that we know nothing about? And by we, I mean we. Yeah, like Cat Williams said, they know everything about us for a reason. Now, General Zhao actually says, too, that he gonna kill the moon spirit because the moon controls the tides of the ocean. But the moons, we are made up basically of over 80% water. So the moon actually controls our emotions as well. So this is supposed to be an allegory to show us that if they can get our emotions to be all over the place, then again, they have weakened our system. Because our emotions is what tells us how to process the information that we receive, right? So if they desensitize us to our emotional triggers and they always chaotic and crazy, we won't know up from down, left from right. So our emotions need to be regulated. They need to be in balance in order for us to make conscious decisions, because the knowledge comes in, we use our emotions to interpret or perceive that knowledge. And then once we use our emotions to do that, we can figure out a path forward. We can do something differently. I also like the scene where Mama almost died and she took him to a sacred garden, put him in primordial waters, and all of a sudden he came back alive. Yeah, like they say, the Garden of Eden, the Fountain of Youth. And what's crazy about that is they're in the North Pole. Now, what's interesting about that is they say that the North Pole is actually where the Garden of Eden is in the Tree of Life. And apparently the Tree of Life, which is this huge tree, was actually cut down. So it looks like a mountain range, but it's not a mountain range. And it can actually see so far over this great plain. But nobody is allowed to go there, like nobody is allowed to go to the South Pole, which is Antarctica. But I digress. They was also talking about water being the element of change because it moves you into flow. Water is your emotions, okay? So your emotions help you to understand information, which is what we just talked about. It also said water is life. It allows you to heal, and change is key to new life. Another thing that I like, that anytime Aang went to an avatar, they all had different personalities, but not all of them were forthcoming. That's the same for our ancestors as well. Not all of them are going to want to give you the information or just freely give it to you because they still maintain a personality. So this is indicative of that as well. Another thing I thought that was interesting is when Azula got mad at her dad, her flames turned blue. Now, what's interesting about that is that the feminine part of the flame is the blue part, the masculine is the red part. The blue part happens to be the hottest part of the flame. So when she got mad at him and she turned blue, she was basically letting him know, I know that I'm more powerful than you are. So relax off of me. Because the blue part of the flame is the hottest part of the flame. So she was basically puffing her chest out like, watch your mouth. But she would never go through with actually proving that to him because, again, there's order. And she's seeking his love or external validation outside of herself. The thing that all the avatars were wrong about was that they kept telling Aang, you got to chart this path alone. You got to do this by yourself. You got to do this by yourself. What made Aang different is that he didn't do it by himself because he didn't have any teachers. He had to learn the shit from scratch. So he had his friends, which made all the difference. I also love the line where he said, let go of the past or you'll never have a future. Because if you constantly looking at the past and what happened, then you get stuck in that energy instead of looking at the lessons. When you're the victim, you get stuck in that energy and your body cannot tell the difference between when it happened. Because literally everything is happening in the present moment. When you're looking forward at the future and you look at what you don't have, you put yourself in this chasing energy. So you constantly, the only thing that you can do is focus on the now moment and what you can do to plant the seeds of the future. Whatever you want to happen in the future, there's little steps you can take right now that'll help you get there. That's the only thing you can control. And the very last part, I just want to talk about Katara for a second, because she does represent the new generation, and they do come in with everything they need to create change. She was a woman who was standing up and saying, women don't have to play the sideline. We can be useful too. And they was like, nah, the old ways say that y'all need to sit down and y'all just need to help people heal. That's it. So Katara goes toe to toe with the master and was like, well, let's see. She was an unconventional learner. She didn't learn like everybody else because she didn't have a teacher. So she started pulling out all these tricks that they wasn't even aware of. But it was important that she was from the water tribe, because water represents your feelings, okay? So when your feelings change, you change, okay? That is a message to us. The younger generation are being born fillers because they don't have this illusion that's in place. That's why a lot of them can remember their past lives. So when it becomes time for them to lead, it's up to us to get the fuck out of their way, because they have everything that they need to lead the charge. They are the seeds of the future. So it's our job to make sure that they prepared and be their teachers. And Katara and them didn't have no teachers. So we got to do that for the generations to come. Katara mastered her element because she wanted to. I hope this helps.